the richest small farming communities I've ever encountered. And a lot of that is, maybe not necessarily indigenous, but Spanish people who have been here for many hundreds of years, who have kept those traditions alive.
Yeah.
They may not have the same sort of spiritual cosmology that a lot of later Anglos who have come here to farm have, but there still is a richness and a closeness to the land that really adds to the fabric of small farming in this area.
Thursday. One of the cleverest people here is 18-year-old Michael Glassman. He says the fields could be planted between May 15th and May 30th with a cover crop of alfalfa, oats, wheat, or clover, but we have no seeds now. Athletic and happy, Michael looks like one of the furry freak brothers with his head of thick, dark, curly hair. He somehow found New Buffalo in a quest from Boston. How naturally these people fit together. I spoke to Ben Garcia, a fine man from Arroyo Hondo and a good friend of the hip people. He is 80 years old and in excellent health. Said it looks like even less water than last year if we don't get rain. Ben is the traditional mayordomo of Arroyo Hondo. Raid, dawn, snow falling, quiet. I had been up to turn off the ditch. Paul and Catalina down to milk the goat.
We're so far away from industrial agriculture here, too. Which is a neat thing, especially after coming from Ohio, which is ruled by big ag. Monsanto and Cargill, and they don't have the same foothold here because you can't really have acres and acres and acres and acres of something because you just don't have the water.
Right. This is considered much more marginal land by their standards.
Multiple crops, like we grow multiple crops. Whereas, like in Ohio, it was very much like, what do you grow? Well, corn or soybeans.
Right.
One thing, and that's just what farming is. You get out, you get in your tractor, and it's not really you and the land, it's you and your big irrigation system and your tractor in the land.
We definitely purchase seed from Johnny's Select Seed and a couple other of the big companies, Fedco and Maine, but we've really been trying to diversify more into locally grown seed. The Dixon Seed Exchange that happens in the spring is a great place to pick up locally grown cultivars. Trying to source seeds that, if not grown here in New Mexico, are at least grown in mountainous climates.
Yeah. Mountainous climates of the West. So
Tuesday, April 25th. All clouds and wind this afternoon. We have about 15% of the garden ready for planting. It's cultivated, fertilized, and raked. A group of foreign tourists here this afternoon. Drums, fire in the circle, kids bedding down, tambourines clanging, people calling, singing, yelling, chanting. Cymbals, bells, plenty of dinner.
Quinoa is another one. We're growing quinoa from White Mountain Farm in Colorado.
Nice.
A lot of the grains. That it really pays off to have the seeds that are grown at high altitudes, because it's, especially with the cold nights we have here, it's just necessary to have really hardy plants.
April 27th. We planted lettuce, broccoli, chard, peas, carrots, beets, and more. A crew of buffaloes and friends took 4 rafts down the Rio Grande. Mudding continued. Because of the little rain, houses can be built out of the very earth if they are maintained.
It's a shorter growing season, so you have to find varieties that produce a little faster, because between our last frost and our first frost can be a very, very short amount of time, sometimes even like 60 days.
Our neighbors tell us that they've seen years when there's a frost every month.
Even July and August.
Right.
June 4th. A storm is coming up now. We can hear the frequent thunder. In the very early dawn, I turned on our ditch. Before the sun rose, the water was in the garden, just what the soil really needed. Jug, Joe, and me in the field irrigating. The new terraces, engineered by Jug, work really excellently. Big squares with a dam all around. Water completely floods the area.
Is just spending time in the garden. And it's spending time all throughout the year and at various times of day.
Yeah.
You know, I really like to see the garden early in the morning, and you know, in the heat of the day, and you know, under the stars, and it gives you a really different perspective. That's one ritual that I tend to have.
June 6th, Election Day. I'm lying on the candle room platform. Louisa is embroidering some astrological signs on some patches for neighbor Helen, who in exchange will do her chart. She tells me to write about my emotions. How do you feel when you are working on the irrigation? I felt like nothing doing it. Nevertheless, I stayed until I could hardly see. Write how my garden is so pretty, says Louisa. That is the terrace garden overlooking our road near the outhouse. The broccoli looks good. Also, there are sunflowers, marigolds, and mint all around. I hear an argument going down in the kitchen. Susie gets pissed at the irrigation system because it is hard to work. Joe planted cabbage and squash.
Plants, fertilizing seedlings, you know, those are things that we really put a lot of thought and care and attention to, as well as planting seeds, which isn't maybe necessarily daily, but it's certainly a regular task. You know, those are things that we really approach with a lot of reverence and a lot of good intention, because we believe that actually has an effect on how well the plants grow. And so really it's, in general, how we approach the plants themselves is somewhat ritualistic. You know, it's I won't plant seeds if I'm in a bad mood.
May 4th, Saturday. Today it really rained. The earth is dark brown, all the green is light and lush. Snow on the mountains, cloaked in clouds and mist. We had our circle outside, lentils, brown bread, and salad for dinner. Julie, here, comes occasionally with her 6 kids and a Chevy car. A new lady, Penelope, arrived with 2 boys, a baby, and a pickup truck.
That's right.
And he did these experiments in the 60s where he attached lie detectors, polygraphs
to a plant,
to plants, and he's, you know, he's just really into polygraphs, and he's the director of a polygraph institute in California, and he attached the electrodes to a plant, just almost, you know, just as a whimsical experiment at first, and really found that he was getting quite dramatic reactions from the plants when he would even have thoughts of harming the plant.
Wow.
And this experiment has been reproduced a number of times from a number of different people. But yeah, we certainly, how we interact with the plants definitely affects how they grow. Yeah, the hippies were onto something.
And never fight in the garden, never argue in the garden, never.
Yeah, they were onto something, and you know, there have been a lot of people who have picked that up and ran with it, and now there's really amazing science dealing with you know, electromagnetic fields and mass consciousness and you know, things of that sort. But I mean, that are really proving we're not nearly as separate as we've believed. We're much closer to a breakthrough in realizing how connected we are, and you know, for some people and for us certainly, you know, plants play a big part in that.
You're not in control of your children as they're growing up. You're just sort of facilitating that.
Right.
You know, giving them opportunities, and it's the same thing raising plants.
Right.
You know, you give them water, you give them fertilizer, you give them what they need, but it's not like you're controlling them.
Right.
You know,
We just work with them.
We just
kind of help them
interact
along.
and try to create the conditions so that they can, you know, be the fullest expressions of themselves.